with Embrace Aonghas.
We all need a little more love in our lives. Sometimes we get caught up in our busy lives and we forget that we are social creatures made for social interaction. We forget to embrace the moments and each other. Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and welcome guests. My name is Aonghas, and today I'd like to get a little bit closer, a little bit more intimate, and talk about something we might see a lot of, but don't always get a chance to discuss it in detail. That's right, I'm going to be talking about the physical hug. Now, why is it a good thing to hug, and why should we do it? When is it appropriate to hug, and where? And most importantly, for a lot of people, how should you hug someone? But first, before I get into those points, I'd like to ask the question, when you hear the word hug, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Do you think of maybe a couple on a date, and you're the third wheel, of course, or do you think of maybe a mother and her child embracing for the first time, or maybe a sports team celebrating a try, or maybe someone who's really into the wildlife and trees, or maybe you just get mortified when you hear anybody mention the word hug because you have your personal space of 3 meters, which I know I used to. But I think, whatever the case, hugging is a healthy form of communication. And the reason I think this is because research shows, in fact, that hugging reduces things like loneliness, depression, stress, and anxiety. And I think when hug also gives you that sense of safety. I also did some other research when I was preparing the speech online, and I did a Google search for why hugs are good, because I needed some more points. And there are a lot of medical pages, and I'm not going to pretend I understood any of those terms, like serotonin and a whole bunch of other things, but it seemed legit. And so from what I gather, hugging seemed like a great thing. So I know what you're thinking now. You're thinking, all right, well, hugging's great. I should get into this. But there's a few more questions we need to answer. When and where is it appropriate to hug, and how do you hug someone? Now, I know I'm an advocate for hugging, but I know we have to be sensible, and there's a time and place for everything. And I was listening to a man's speech, and maybe an example where it might not be appropriate to hug is in the bathroom. Because if you just imagine this scene for a while where you're washing your hands and someone walks in the door and you might recognize that person you haven't seen in 2 years, and you might think, this is my chance to hug that person. Well, you've got to take a pause for a moment there, because there's 3 things wrong with that situation. 1, your hands are probably wet. 2, they've probably come into the bathroom to go to the toilet. And 3, if you did manage to hug that person somehow, and then someone else walks in and sees you standing there hugging someone of the same gender, and they don't know what's going on, that could get awkward pretty quickly. Another time you might not want to hug is that situation when you're driving someone home and they're about to get out, and you're like, oh, nice day, I'll see you later. And you think, that's my moment to hug that person. Might not be the best time to hug because, and this is speaking from personal experience, you've got your seatbelt on, they're trying to get out of your car, and you're trying to do that like sideways thing. You've got this random arm here, and you're coming around, and it's really awkward, and it's just not pleasant for anybody involved. But if you're really desperate, I've learned over the years that what you need to do is get out of the car and make some excuse that you need to find something in the boot, and there's your opportunity because you're both standing, and it's all good. But apart from those 2 situations where you don't want to hug, I think pretty much any other scenario is the green light. And I think you can just go up to anyone and hug those people. So you know when to hug people, you know where you shouldn't hug people, and now you're probably thinking, now I want to do this thing, this hug thing, and how do I do it? What's the process? Well, this is where the juicy part of the speech comes, I guess, and I must make a disclaimer at this point, and that the hugs I'm talking about are friendly, platonic, short hugs, mainly due to the lack of my experience in any other kinds of hugs, but also because that would go forever, and I don't even know anything about it. So that's the disclaimer. So the how. I really think of the hug as a 2-phase process. There's the initiation phase and the engagement phase. Now, the initiation phase is before the hug's actually happened, and you're approaching the person, you've made sure you're not in the bathroom or in the car with the seatbelt on, and you think, this is my chance to hug that person. Now, you've got to think of a few things. The first thing is your arms. Now, I'm a right-handed person, so I tend to raise my right arm and lower my left arm and kind of go in on this kind of angle. Now, if they're a right-handed person as well, and they might think the same way as me, they might come in on that angle. Now, if you think of the maths, that fits, right? It's pleasant. That's why you've got to initiate from a distance about which angle you're going onto. And, of course, they'll know that you're coming in for a hug, otherwise that's just weird. But if they're left-handed or you don't have time to check out which way they write and you haven't stalked them long enough on Facebook, then you might not know that. So it's important that you do that early. The second thing you've got to worry about is how high they are. Now, I'm not a very tall person for a male, apparently, as I've been told several times. But you know, if you're hugging a tall person, you might not get over the shoulder, so you don't want to be, reaching up here. You might just want to come in from the bottom, and they'll probably come in from the top. If you're a similar height, that diagonal thing works, which is something to realize. The second thing to remember before you get into the engagement phase is that when you're going to commit to a hug, you should follow through. You know, I used to have this problem where I'd go into a hug and I didn't know whether that person was going to hug me back, so it's kind of like the 10%, 20%, and I'm thinking, is this going to happen? No. Handshake, that's awkward already. So you've got to know if the hug's going to happen, and if that person's not going to commit but you already have, just follow through and it'll be fine, trust me. The engagement phase is when you're in the hug, and you've got to remember a couple of things there too. The hand on the back, is it a pat, is it a hold, or is it a rub? Now, for tricks for young players, if you don't know what to do, I would suggest just a hold and a release, and you're over it, and it's all happened and it's very pleasant. Otherwise, if your hands go wandering and things go crazy, then I'm not going to help you. So, now that you're experts at hugging, my challenge for you tonight is to find that person this week sometime that you've been meaning to hug, go up to that person and give them a hug, because you never know, that simple gesture could make their day. Thank you.